Coming up on this episode of Flirtations, we're talking about trauma and how our sometimes difficult and painful life experiences shape the way we approach dating, relationships, and even our own self-worth. We have two incredible guests for this conversation, Ilyse Kennedy, a psychotherapist, and Lindsay Camp, a licensed marriage and family therapist, to explore with us what trauma really is and how it influences our patterns in love and connection. We'll take on the dual themes of hyperindependence, where you feel like you have to handle everything on your own, and hypervigilance, the feeling of not trusting anyone. We'll share what it means to heal from relational wounds and why rebuilding trust, both in others and within yourself, can feel so challenging, but is absolutely possible. Finally, we've got healing strategies, step to break free from wounds of the past, and why your healing is right on time. So, whether you're working to heal old heartbreaks or simply want to deepen your self-awareness in relationships, this conversation is filled with insights and actionable advice to help you move forward with confidence and connection. Let's go, Flirties.
I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. Hello, my name is Benjamin. I'm the flirt coach and a gay Libra. Everyone has an inner flirt.
Hey, Flirty.
Live, laugh, flirt.
Work the flirt.
Work the flirt. Delulu is the Salulu. Expert on the flirt.
Hey, Flirty. There's always another flirt.
Everyone has an inner flirt. Get out of your head and into the flirt.
Flirties, on the show today, we have Lindsay Camp, licensed marriage and family therapist, and Ilyse Kennedy, licensed professional counselor supervisor, on the show to have a conversation with us about trauma, healing, and the dual themes of hyperindependence and hypervigilance. So many questions came through. I am excited for this conversation. Hello and welcome to the show.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being on Flirtations today. How's it going over there?
Going good over here.
Yeah.
Going good. We're based in Texas, and we've got our Texas weather doing its thing.
All over the place.
All over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. We're, and I'm in North Carolina, so we don't have quite the same weather. Although during the winter, I don't know, you get it first what we're going to get.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All right. At the top of the show, I haven't done too many with dual guests. So Lindsay, say hello.
Hello.
And Ilyse.
Hello.
All right, Flirties. Lindsay and Ilyse, though. So yeah, you can start to differentiate between the two voices, and just really thrilled to have you on. I got to be honest, the Flirties always come through with questions, but when I asked the Flirties for what's on their mind, what do they want to hear about today, how can we help them, they came through with so many questions. And what's interesting is not a lot of them were the same.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's get to it.
Really, really good. So I'd love for the Flirties to learn a little bit more about you all, your work, and you started a podcast recently, which I want to hear about as well.
We did. So I'll start off that I own a group practice, Moving Parts Psychotherapy, in Austin, Texas. And I've done some work on Instagram under that same practice name. And so I share about trauma education. Mm-hmm. And then I wrote a book called The Tender Parts. Yes. And then we recently started a podcast called The Healing Journey, mm-hmm. that is all about our westernized and alternative forms of healing and the different intersections that we're experiencing in our own healing. So mm-hmm. we were so lucky to have Benjamin as a guest to talk about flirting and dating as part of our healing journey.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm Lindsay Camp. I own a group practice in Austin called Austin Teen Therapy, where we specialize in working with young people and mm-hmm. the systems that they're a part of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. And teasing our collaboration on the healing journey, which is already recorded. And we had so much fun. That was a blast. Y'all did an amazing job. And I can't wait to listen to the episode.
That was so much fun. I can't wait till it comes out. But I'm also terrified because maybe we revealed too much.
That's part of the fun, as we talked about. Yes. Like, people just, like, listeners, the Flirties, whoever, daters, they just want real. Like, give us the real, like, just who are you, right? Especially like you're listening to this through your speakers, through your headphones. You feel like you can really make the connection with who's it's not just about the tip, the trick, the strategy, the how-to. Yeah, I mean, we're going to get into plenty of that today, but also feeling a little bit of connection through your speakers too. Yeah.
Definitely.
I feel a little less alone.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's so important too. What's the origin of the Healing Journey name? How did you all come up with that?
So we are big fans of Bravo. We always say Andy Cohen is daddy. And we are huge fans of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And Whitney Wild Rose in one of the episodes coined this term, the healing journey, because of her accent. When she said that she was working on her healing, she said it as healing. And so please don't sue us, Whitney, before this comes out. But we took
lovingly borrowed.
Yeah, we lovingly borrowed
her
word healing. And then it's the Healing Journey podcast.
Bravo was like my Bible in a sense. I mean, in a way. And the Housewives, Salt Lake City, my favorite franchise.
Yes.
I'm obsessed.
Yes.
I mean, could I get a few of your thoughts on this recent season?
Okay. I mean, these women are earning their paychecks. I can't believe we're getting a Mean Girls-esque scenario with what's happening in the finale. What about you?
Likewise.
Yeah.
They just started out so strong. Like one of them is married to their granddaddy. Like it.
Yeah.
The combination of women is just bonkers, and I can't get enough of Mary. I need to see her
either.
Peering into that.
The bat mitzvah.
Oh my gosh, Tamara's she was knocking on the. Oh my, that was so.
I love that the producers
Yeah.
didn't let her know where to go. They were like, let's just let this play out. Like it's top tier for me. It's
showing up like 2 hours late, like shuffling in. God,
Always.
I'm so glad she came back to the franchise. Right, I really missed her.
God.
I did too.
Yeah, as this episode is airing, the reunion has wrapped, right? We've seen it. So, maybe having some different thoughts now, but I mean, just season after season, giving us everything.
Delivering.
Mm-hmm.
We can't say that every franchise is earning their paycheck, but this franchise is.
Yeah. If you're looking, I mean, Flirty is a new guilty pleasure. Wherever you are in the world, I need you to stream The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And please do yourself a favor, start with season 1. There's no need to jump to the current season 5. Literally start with the first one. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, because you got to meet Jen Shaw.
Yes.
Oh my God. And that was, how did we get Jen Shaw to Monica to now we've got some new housewives coming in with Bronwyn, with Brittany. Oh,
Angie K.
Angie K. We love Angie K.
My God. I'm obsessed with that show. Wait, okay, we have to talk about trauma and hyperindependence, and we can't go down the side.
This isn't a Housewives podcast.
Oh my God, the Housewives rabbit hole, but just so good. So shout out to them, and I totally get the reference now because I also I don't say healing, like I have to force myself healing. It's healing. It's healing. Yes,
healing.
I get that.
We're healing.
So, all right. What a fun way to open the show. And now about some trauma, because the Flirties, they've been through it. I think they're in some different phases and stages of their own healing. But just to bring us into the moment, to root us in the conversation, talking just a little bit about trauma. I think a lot of us have different ideas and definitions, even concepts of what trauma is. So just giving some words, some language to that experience. What is it?
You want me to take this one? Okay. Often I think we think of trauma as an event. Like it's a serious car crash or it is an assault. But the actual event is not what constitutes trauma. Trauma is actually our body's and nervous system's physiological response to perceived threat, real or perceived threat.
Okay.
So our entire histories impact our experience of trauma and how our nervous systems respond to it. So, for example, somebody might get in a car accident, and because of their history of having very secure caregivers, maybe at the time of the accident, they weren't alone. they had somebody comforting with them and the police stepped in right away and helped them out, it doesn't actually register in the nervous system as PTSD. It's like a blip. For somebody else who maybe has had a lot of other trauma in their past, when they get in a car accident because of the circumstances at the time of the accident of like feeling alone, and maybe police didn't come for a long time, and it was there was a higher threat, it registers in their system as PTSD. And so trauma is the physiological response to real or perceived threat. PTSD is the symptoms we experience after a trauma that impact us in the long run. Like, for example, we might experience like nightmares.
Yeah.
We have a stronger sensitivity to threat that seems like the same type of threat as the traumatic event, stuff like that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I got some questions here because I think I'm hearing this described in a way that I've never heard it described before, where you're really singling out a precipitating event, so an event that could be reoccurring perhaps within your relationship or family dynamics, and then born out of this event is PTSD and or trauma, which is this reliving of a perceived threat, even if that threat is not present.
Yeah. So
okay.
Then we have complex trauma, which complex trauma is probably a lot more relevant to what a lot of us experience when trauma arises in response to relationships and dating. So complex trauma is like trauma that has been compacted over time. So it's like what we experience from our families early on, like perhaps we didn't have a caregiver that could respond to our needs consistently. It's a lot more relational and it has a longer term impact. And can also show up when it shows up as like complex PTSD. We're talking about relational trauma, and it also might show up a lot more subtly. Like we might not notice the symptoms of complex PTSD until we're in a relationship and we're noticing like, oh my gosh, when my partner goes out with their friends, I completely feel like I'm abandoned and I'm crying at home and I don't know why I'm crying.
Which so often gets misdiagnosed and pathologized as a personality disorder or something wrong with the person without looking at it systemically.
Okay. And that's so interesting. And so complex trauma, I just want to make sure I understand, it can exist alongside PTSD as well.
So when I was talking about how the way a traumatic event will impact us depends on our history. You can experience complex trauma and have a traumatic event more deeply impact you and have PTSD symptoms from the event because of your history.
Okay. I think I understand now. So when we're out there dating, we're adults, right? We're getting into relationships and you feel like, I'm going to use the T word, triggered, right? But you're having that emotionally reactive experience. It's really stirring up some PTSD, some of that trauma that you've experienced maybe in other parts of your life.
There's a phrase that maybe gets tossed around. Maybe the flirties have heard that if it's hysterical, it's likely historical. You're having a big response to something that maybe feels a little more elevated than the situation normal. And I'm using air quotes, like normal. There's likely some a history there.
Okay. I haven't heard that before. If it's hysterical, it's probably historical. I love that. Let's stay here for a moment, and I'm going to help the flirties, right, start to untangle perhaps some anxiety, right? Like they didn't text back right away, or, you've had a few dates and maybe communication dropped off a little bit, right? Something to look at in its own right, but that experience of anxiety, I'm overthinking versus, maybe I'm like reliving a trauma a little bit. So how can we start to differentiate between those two experiences?
So I think this is tricky because we have our intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a lot of rules that are out there about dating.
Yeah.
We definitely can notice when we're excited about a new potential partner, there's a lot of adrenaline coursing through the body.
Mm-hmm.
Our cortisol might be activated.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting dopamine hits from the text messages.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on hormonally. And we can start to, from like even the moment you start texting with somebody, we have our entire relational history behind us as we're texting, and we probably have like high hopes for what this relationship could be.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very beginning stages, we're really establishing safety with this person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though it's somebody completely new and we don't know them yet.
Yeah.
All of us have a universal experience of not wanting to be alone. Like we literally need connection as humans.
Mm-hmm.
And connection is also the antidote to trauma. And if we've ever experienced abandonment in our past, or we've experienced any type of ruptures in connection, whether that's from our caregivers or whether that's from dating relationships, all of that is coming with us into those first few text messages with a potential partner.
Yeah. Okay.
And, you know, the hormones are activated.
Yes.
We can pay a lot of attention to what's happening within our bodies. Like as a dater, as a flirty, I know this firsthand. Like I definitely feel the rush of excitement when I'm feeling good about somebody new that I'm talking to.
Yeah.
And when I feel my heart beating and I feel myself looking towards my phone, and I feel the disappointment when I don't receive a text for a while, I know it's time to take some breaths.
Yeah. Yeah.
To maybe go look at the trees, to put the phone away, to connect back and ground myself so that I can minimize some of the hormones coursing through my body.
Yeah.
So I can calm those parts of me that have these old relational wounds that I've carried my whole life, and just be more grounded in the present, and that this is a wait and see with this new potential person.
Okay. Okay. That's really helpful. Some grounding, some presence, some deep breaths. Go touch some grass, flirties. Yeah. I mean, my gosh, I've had this experience. I know all daters have. And where I was, framing the conversation a little bit as well, I think we can have this parallel experience of having anxiety because there's some uncertainty in the dating process. If you're new, where are things going? I'm looking to build that safety, right? Develop a connection. Can I trust this person? Can I rely on this person? Like you're just searching for that. And so being in the gray area of dating a little bit, right? Not sacrificing needs and desires, boundaries, right? Self-abandoning yourself, right? Of course, but then also seeing that anxiety could exist alongside some of these much deeper relational wounds that we're carrying into the dating process. And so if you're the flirty, having that experience that I've had where it's, you start just going to, right, the kind of the hysterical thought of it all, the intrusive thoughts, it's never going to happen. I'm not good enough. I gotta, reach out, text. I need the validation kind of thing. I just need someone to just choose me, pick me. Seeing that anxiety is normal. You're going to have anxiety dating, but also see that as separate, but perhaps parallel with this experience of, damn, like there's some deeper stuff happening there. Okay. That is really good. And now, I think for pretty much the majority of the conversation, I want to get to as many questions from the flirties as we can about dating. So just grounding us for a moment in hypervigilance and hyperindependence. This is two manifestations, I think, of trauma that you could have one, you could have both. Yeah. So what is, maybe starting with hyperindependence, what is that?
She's our resident hyperindependent, and I'm our resident hypervigilant.
Fantastic.
So I'm going to throw the hyperindependent to you.
Okay.
Happy to. So hyperindependence is this sense of I can't trust anybody else, and so I have to do it all.
Yeah.
And it closes us off in so many ways. And it also meets a need born out of survival. It's born out of necessity. And so there's a real purpose that it does serve and has served, but it also really limits our connection and our availability to ourselves, to each other.
Yeah.
And it manifests in this way of even just subtle things like I can get my own door. Or I don't want to ask them for help. I don't want to be a burden. And all these ways that we try to do it all ourselves, which we know is impossible. And so we're setting ourselves and our potential partners up for failure from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
And then hypervigilance, I think of as like a tight grip. Like when I am in my hypervigilant state, I am like tightly wound. It feels like I just have a washcloth that is wringing inside of me and my hands are gripping onto it. And so hypervigilance shows up a lot as we're constantly looking for cues of safety. Okay. And when we receive those cues of safety or what we perceive to be cues of safety, we latch onto them. Like for me, a lot of times that shows up in like, they need to tell me, they need to like plan the date. I need to know all the details. I need to know the night before exactly what time we're meeting. I like to personally show up to a date earlier than the other person so that I can feel comfortable in the environment and so that I'm not the one looking around for the person that I'm meeting. And we talked a bit about that anxiousness, like especially at the beginning stages of dating where you're establishing what the connection will be.
Yeah.
For those of us who tend towards hypervigilance, we're really holding on to any cues that tell me that this person is going to stick around and that this person could be a safe, secure base. Okay. And we're really spiraling about anything that seems unclear or a potential red flag. Like I am questioning the group chat at all turns to see if they have any read on what is happening.
I've also noticed in the hypervigilance piece that sometimes in looking for that safety, we'll create it falsely by kind of baiting with questions or comments to then hear what we want to hear. But we put the person in a position to say nothing but what they, the nice thing to say or whatever. Yeah. And so I think that there's there's this creation, this pattern that can happen of playing out that anxiety and trying to like get the result you want. Yeah. But it's manifested.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I got a question here around hypervigilance, and like some words that are coming to my mind are trust, control, and perfection. So like I want to highlight the difference between, like good dating behavior, maybe showing up early for the date. If that's works well for you, helps with some anxiety. And you want consistent texting and communication, that kind of stuff. But when your actions, like Lindsay, I think you were just talking about, really manifested out of this anxiety, the need to control, the need to constantly have that safety and creating it maybe falsely for yourself. And where trust comes into this for the hypervigilant dater. Yeah, is it that they don't trust themselves? They have a hard time trusting other people?
There's this piece that's interesting somatically that anxiety and excitement feel pretty similar in our bodies.
Yes.
And so if you don't know the differences for yourself or even get kind of like tripped up, that kind of makes the beginning part a little muddy of like, oh, fuck, like, am I excited about this? Or am I actually like getting some like, ooh, red flag warning signs?
Also, a lot of times I notice with dating anxiety and hypervigilance, not from personal experience or anything, but
couldn't be us.
Couldn't be us. Sometimes when I really pause with myself, when I'm feeling anxious about a dating situation or I mention to Lindsay that I'm feeling anxious about a dating situation, she'll say, how much caffeine have you had today and have you eaten yet? And most times the answer is no.
Yeah.
And when I check in more deeply with myself, a lot of times anxiety is like the top layer of the onion.
Yeah.
And when you peel the onion, there's usually a deeper emotion that we don't want to touch into.
Yeah.
And having anxiety around a new person that you're dating is way more fun than most types of anxiety that you could have, or deeper emotions that maybe I'm not ready to touch yet. And so we might be feeling and experiencing this hypervigilance and anxiety around a potential new partner. But when we really pause and check in with ourselves, like, I have like a looming deadline that I don't want to get to.
Yeah.
Or I'm actually feeling like a deep sense of grief that I don't want to touch into. And so I think that can be another factor of the hypervigilance and anxiety.
Interesting. A little bit of projection, maybe.
Perhaps, but it couldn't be me.
Could it be me? Yeah, me neither. I lean toward God. I'm trying so hard to heal the hyper independence. I am like, so hyper independent in all the ways. Don't ask me for help. I don't need anything. I got this. Like, I just try and do it all on my own. But what you were sharing, Lindsay, like, it really creates this divide, this barrier of like, it's not necessarily the act of asking for help. It's just allowing someone to feel included. Like, they're a part of your life. Like, ooh, this person wants me, like they're choosing to spend time with me. Like, your hyper independence becomes that barrier that oftentimes is right. Then the communication may be about other things, about why, you're kind of classically avoidant, or you're pulling back, or you're not really opening up, or there's a lack of vulnerability, or the communication is inconsistent. Like, yeah, we could get into anxious, avoidant, all that stuff. I mean, that could be a part of it. But speaking to really like hyper independence and hypervigilance, I see these themes play out in dating all the time. Yeah, whether you've been through a trauma or not, I think we develop these habits. Can someone be both? Yeah. Okay.
So I think that the hypervigilance and hyper independence, like, what they really are is threat responses. And so when we're in the beginning stages and we're trying to see, like, is this person going to be a secure relationship for me?
Yeah.
We're probably in a constant state of threat because there is no certainty on whether this person is going to stick around. Those threat responses, we can't help but go back to the attachment pieces and know that when we're experiencing these threat responses, because it's in response to a relationship, that it's going to be part of our attachment system where the threat responses are being triggered.
Okay.
We've been taught often that we have like one fixed state of attachment.
Yeah.
And actually, we respond to different relationships based on what we're experiencing from the other person. So instead of this one fixed attachment style where I am only anxious, or I am only avoidant, or I'm only disorganized, or I'm only secure, when we're actually experiencing security and cues of safety, we're more likely for our attachment system to respond from a secure place. Like, I will say to Lindsay, like, in response to different relationships, like, oh, I'm falling into a pool of avoidance. Like, my avoidant pools are coming up, even though I tend towards being more anxious.
Okay.
And it really depends on what we're experiencing from that potential partner, how our attachment systems respond, and how our threat responses respond.
Okay. That's really helpful even for me as a dater and as the flirt coach. Is like, one of the hangups I've had with attachment theory is I think it's not presented with that nuance. It's like it's presented you're one or the other, or you're one and not all. And I've always thought it's a little bit more fluid because your attachment style, right, is present. It's not individual to romantic relationships. It shows up in friendships and with family as well. And you may be secure with one, but then anxious here and avoidant there. And I see it now. Yes, you're a part of it, but also a reflection of the dynamics of that specific connection too. It makes so much sense. Yeah. That's so interesting.
And there's that piece of pattern, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you tend toward someone who brings out your avoidant parts?
Yep.
Like, what is that? Like,
yes,
there's so there's some more personal pieces folded in there.
Yeah. All right. Let's ask this question first. About, I think this person is leaning, maybe more hyper independent. They say, I often get anxiety to think about someone being part of my everyday life because I feel like I'm going to lose me. How do I set the boundary of me and personal time with a partner in a way that doesn't make them feel excluded? Good question, huh?
That makes me so curious about how they do that not in relationship. Like,
Yeah,
how they take care of their time and themselves not in relationship. And if they're able to do that when they're not in a relationship, then I would see that path being a lot smoother when they're in a relationship. That's just the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that?
No matter what, we're gonna have our sense of self. Even if you give a lot in a relationship and it feels like you've lost some self in the relationship, we're always going to have access to our sense of self. Like, that's our personal secure base that's inside of us. We can really lean into taking care of ourselves and like scheduling out self-care and the things that we love to do and work and everything. And if somebody comes into our lives, we can start to fold them into our lives. But we can do that in a way that still makes time for them, but we keep our self-care and the things that we have to do for ourselves as a priority so that we don't lose ourselves in the relationship or completely throw everything out the window to be in a relationship, or the relationship becomes everything.
Yes. So good. I know there's a lot of flirties out there that relate to this question, that experience of, right? It's like what's interesting to me with the wording here is feeling like they are going to lose some of themselves, lose maybe some personal time. And so that's where some boundaries come into play here, feeling like you don't have to rush, you can communicate, pacing and all that good stuff. But I'm curious if there's been a pattern of, because God, I used to do this all the time. I would just make the person I was dating my life. Right? Like, their friends became my friends. Their hobbies became my hobbies. Their TV shows, whether it was Housewives or not, became my TV shows. And I just took on this identity of their partner and not me. And so I wonder if that's part of this flirty's experience. And the word lose here, it's like, I would say, think about how much you have to gain. Think about how much you can learn about yourself, new experiences you can have. Like, dating is supposed to be limitless, not limiting. And so if you're dating someone who feels like they're shutting you down or they're boxing you in, like, that's not a safe connection. And so that would just not be, oh my gosh, a whole other conversation. Yeah, that's not your person. Yeah. Such an interesting question. Let's do, I thought this one was interesting too. This flirty said, why do I feel like being vulnerable is weak?
Well,
right?
Our goddamn society.
Yeah.
How we've conditioned people to feel. I think we also misunderstand vulnerability because there is a way in which we can use the word to say, like, this population is more vulnerable to X, Y, and Z, or there is a kind of a slant to the word that does indicate risk and terror, fear, and things like that. But the vulnerability that we're talking about is openness, and heart forward, and sharing, and not having the answer, not having it all figured out. And that can be really scary to say to somebody, here's how I'm feeling, and I don't know. And so the first piece that comes to my mind is like the way that we've learned how to handle our emotions, and it's not well, bitch. So that's a little bit that comes up for me in that question, is that of course you think that because you've been taught to think that. But it doesn't have to be that way. And once you have that experience of being vulnerable and having it met with loving witness and support, it starts to shift that narrative. So I would recommend that they try it in some safe context, like a best friend or a safe parent or partner, to open a little and see how it feels, because it feels fucking good on the other side of it.
Yeah. I love that so much. Yeah, my thought here is exactly very similar. It's like, I wonder if they have had an experience, probably so, where they tried to be vulnerable and they were shut down, or like they were made fun of or teased. I feel like that can be, God, one of the most harmful experiences, when you're trying to be honest with someone and they make fun of you about it, or they belittle your want, your need. Like that's
their shit.
Yeah.
That's theirs. Leave it with them. Don't take that on. Internalize that.
I say in 2025, vulnerability is the new sexy. Go for it, right? You're not trauma dumping on a first date, but you can, dip your toe into the deep end just a little bit. It's okay.
Yes.
Yeah. This flirty sounds like they have a little bit of a dating pattern. They say, when I feel anxiety or fear early in dating, I revert to hyperindependence and shut myself off. How could I perhaps break the pattern?
I think this comes from probably a fear of getting hurt. It's a self-protective mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
And dating is really vulnerable. Like, even if we're not speaking to like the last question that was talking about being vulnerable in dating, putting yourself out there in general is vulnerable, and we open ourselves up to a lot of hurt.
Yeah.
Even just in the potential rejection, but also what I was speaking to before about all of our past relational wounds coming with us as we're swiping.
Yeah.
I think there are big opportunities for healing as you're dating.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is in really listening to your own system. You don't have to blow past your threat responses, because really, like, that would be what we're talking about when we're talking about a threat response, the hyperindependence, pushing people away.
Yeah.
You can enter into something more slowly and let potential partners know, like, hey, this has kind of been my pattern in the past. I'm trying to break that. I really want to take things slow and establish a sense of safety so that I can move past the stage where I might start to pull away if things get too vulnerable or serious.
Yeah.
If it feels like it's a continued pattern that's too difficult to break on your own, there's always the opportunity to try therapy if that's accessible to you.
Yeah. I wish we could all just do a little bit of therapy.
Yes.
I know. It's so good. But I think this flirty is starting from that's all going to be super helpful for them. And they're starting from this great place of, they have the self-awareness around this pattern, right? Like, you don't know what you don't know. So they've got that part. And then I'm curious, what is underlying the fear? What is underlying the anxiety? Yeah, I've got some further questions there if we were on a one-to-one kind of thing. But it's like, how could they start to create that little bit of safety that feels good, and that they can do that as a practice with their other relationships? Yeah, friendships, family, all that good stuff too. So I think this is a really common experience daters have, is when it maybe gets a little too real, too vulnerable, too intimate. It's the pullback. Yeah, that you might experience from other daters. But if you're the one doing that as well, what if, you had those boundaries in place? Like, part of me also wonders, is there maybe some uncertainty about why they're dating? Maybe what they're looking for, kind of thing. So getting really clear on some values there. Yeah. A few thoughts. Doing what we can for the flirties. This question, I hope I word it correctly. So it's a little bit masculine and feminine dynamics, energetic dynamics, which I don't get into a ton, but I think it's very interesting. And this person says it's a lady flirty who identifies as very independent, right? And they're saying they've dated guys, and that is off-putting to them, or off-putting to the guys they're dating. So how they can find that balance of, right, I am who I am. I'm my own woman, but embrace a little bit more of my maybe feminine energy too.
Yeah, so we all have masculine and feminine energy in us.
Mm-hmm.
And when we say that, feminine energy is more of a receptive, more of a warm, more of a nurturing, kind of a softer energy. And then the masculine energy, more like doer energy.
Yeah.
And so in thinking about that, in thinking about recognizing that she has both in her and trying to find that balance.
I have a controversial take.
I could feel something coming from you, and so I was like, I think I could feel that.
Yeah, I have a controversial take.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't subscribe to the masculine and feminine energy bullshit.
Yeah. Okay. See, I'm totally with you. You've never heard it on Flirtations. Yeah.
Okay. I think there are like ingrained gender dynamics that come from the patriarchy. And I think some spiritual Instagram practitioners have taken this idea of masculine energy and feminine energy and are actually using it to uphold the patriarchy. Honestly, Flirty, I think you're dating the wrong people. And if these men can't handle your power and assertiveness, these are not the men for you.
Oop.
I
love that.
I'm with
That might be the soundbite for the episode, I think.
I'm with that.
Lots of respect to the spiritual Instagram healer practitioners that may see this.
Yeah, that's it's a theme that I haven't done on this show, and I don't really explore in my content either, because I get the gender norms of dating, but then breaking things down into masculine, feminine, when, like you said, Lindsay, we have both energies within us. It's the yin and the yang. You've got both. And I think, maybe this Flirty should date some stronger guys. I don't know.
Maybe.
They can handle that. All right, this Flirty, or let's give some kudos. Let's give some kudos to a Flirty who says, I don't do this anymore. I had to learn to ask for help and be open to support, especially after getting divorced. Yes.
We love a divorced queen or king.
I'm not sure, actually, a divorced king?
Congrats to a divorced king.
Yeah, good for them. Let's talk about a little bit here, the hypervigilance piece. And so there are a few questions that came through here about how to trust people again, or how we can, a few steps we could take just to build some of that trust when we're out there dating.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
What a good question.
So important. I know.
Yeah.
I know this is not necessarily what people want to hear. But I think it starts with building your own self-trust. Because when I build in enough trust within myself, and I know I always have me to fall back on, even though connections would be beautiful and wonderful.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate romantic connections and other connections that make me feel and know that I'm not alone. When I'm building my self-trust, I know that if I am betrayed by a partner, or if something doesn't work out the way I hoped it would, I can fall back on me. And I have a very solid tool belt of the things that I can do for myself when I'm falling back on me.
Yeah.
In that same sense, just like what we were talking about earlier, like really dipping your toe gently into building trust with partners. Like we can't know that we can trust somebody for at least 6 months. Okay. And we can find like little cues of things that they're saying that lead us to believe that they're seemingly a safe person.
Yeah.
That they're seemingly somebody I want to continue a connection with. And so we can hold those bits of safety. But most important is building the trust within ourselves first, because that's who we're going to have if a relationship is to end.
At the end of the day, the longest relationship you'll ever have. You.
Yep.
To kind of piggyback on that too, that sense of trust gives you the litmus test.
Okay.
Can I trust this person or not? Knowing your own, like getting connected to your intuition and your gut feeling.
Yeah.
And not second guessing that or talking yourself out of it will kind of keep you a little safer.
Yeah.
Possibly.
I like that. And I'm thinking of two kind of tried and true pieces of dating advice here, where it's you can't screw up the right connection, whatever that connection may be, for a season, reason, a lifetime, romantic or not. Like, you're not going to mess it up by being you and just dating with your own purpose and intuition at the forefront. If you find yourself rushing and like it's that experience of, I just want to have all those answers, or I want all, right, sort of like, you're playing Tetris or something. You want everything to fall into place just right. But trust is really like, it's okay that you don't trust someone right away. And so give yourself permission and patience with that. It's like you were sharing, it's built over time. Yeah.
We even say that to our clients.
Yeah, all the time.
That trust is earned. It's not a given. Like, make us work for it. Like, give a little, see how they do. Give a little more, see how they do.
Absolutely. That's a good approach right there. I want to ask one more question and then a little bit about healing before we conclude the conversation today. This flirty has a question about guilt and shame, which I think is really important, especially as someone that has, if you've experienced trauma. So how can you manage the guilt and shame of asking for help, right? Of starting to trust people again. I feel like I've had that experience where I'm like, this feels so wrong to me. And I'm really guilty that, or I feel guilty and shameful that I'm even thinking this.
I love the exercise of flipping it. Think about the time somebody asked you for help. Think about the time somebody was vulnerable and came to you and said, hey, I'm hurting. I need a little help with this.
Yeah.
In your mind, did you conceive of them as weak, or did you think poorly of them? No.
No.
You said,
Yeah.
What an honor. What an honor to see them. What an honor to help them.
Yeah.
And so, flipping it and imagining being in the other position, how good that feels and how connective that feels.
Absolutely.
Can kind of help to soothe that just a touch.
I love that.
And a lot of times when we have guilt or shame around asking for help or allowing others in, it's our relational wounds. It's that when we were very young, probably our own needs were shamed. And so we have these parts within ourselves that shame us before anybody else can. So if I shame myself because I have a need and I don't ask for help, it stops me from getting hurt again, even though that shame is actually hurting us. And so it's so much work where we have to work with those parts of us that shame us.
Yes.
A little trick that I do with my clients when they're hearing a shaming voice or a self-critical voice is to really pause with it and check in and see, like, does that voice sound like me, or does that voice sound like somebody outside of myself? And oftentimes when we trace it back, it's either the voice or the compounded voices of people that have shamed us in the past and who have criticized us in the past. And so it's very rare that our inner self-critic voice is actually coming from us. And so that can be a way to start to mitigate the guilt and shame that comes up and allows it to dissipate a bit so that we can let people in and let people help us.
Yeah. Oh, that was fascinating. That's, two tips I'm going to take with me from the conversation today, the flipping the script, right? And also, what is this voice? Is this actually my intuition, my anxiety, or am I sort of maybe replaying a trauma or an unpleasant experience from the past? Like, whose voice is really in my head right now? Thank you for that. Let's get into these last few moments, some healing.
Yes.
Do it.
So,
bring on the healing.
Bring on the healing. Shout out Whitney Wild Rose. Have you tried any of her skincare products, by the way? I haven't.
No.
I haven't either. I really do want to go to Meredith Marks's shop, though.
You know what? I heard it's sparse. I heard there's not a lot of product.
What?
But I would love to go to Beauty Lab.
Yeah.
Beauty Lab.
God. Yes.
iconic location, even just
Yes,
to be in the
please.
parking lot of Beauty
That's-
Lab and Laser.
I think
Yeah.
I think I want to see the parking lot more than
Yes.
than the inside of the beauty lab. Yeah.
Yes.
Because that's
Yeah.
where, I mean, infamously, Jen Shaw started her run from the
Arrested.
police.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a Sprinter van.
God, that was
Iconic.
God. They have really taken us through so much. I mean, a little bit of a side note. Do you think Whitney really had her jewelry designed by Alibaba?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think so too.
To be the case.
Yeah, I think so too. I think
Yeah.
she's buying it wholesale and just rebranding it as
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
which is a tried and true business model. And I get that she has to defend it, but it was Meredith, right, that blew up that, like, but was like, oh, I didn't send those texts, which,
Meredith, or was it Lisa?
or was it Lisa? Oh, it might have been
Could
Lisa.
have been both. Could have been both.
Sounds
They
like
could have been in.
remember. Like,
They could have been in
yeah.
cahoots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I have reached out to Heather Gay to be on Flirtations. I would die. I would die. I have not heard back. So Heather Gay, if you're listening, there's an email in your inbox from me, Benjamin the Flirt Coach, inviting you on Flirtations to talk about, because she has her book, right?
Yes.
And I think her
Yes.
story would be so fascinating. Now, a
Have you read her
divorced
book?
mom of 3.
Yes.
I have not, but I am
have.
going to. It's really good, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Heather
I should-
Gay, if you're listening, we need you on the pod.
And I'm gonna read your book, yes, because
Yes,
she's
yes.
got, I mean, a story that I know so many flirties and daters would relate to. She's been through it and came out the other side,
Yeah.
just with the receipts, the screenshots, the timeline, the proof.
timeline, fucking everything.
The way that lives rent free in my mind, and I quote it all the time. Ah,
Of course.
the beach scene with the music and
Oh.
like the sun was setting and the wind. Oh,
Gorgeous.
God.
Gorgeous.
The outfits, the dresses,
Yes.
the
Yes.
drama.
Yes.
The drama.
Gorgeous.
God.
Gorgeous.
Healing.
Hilling.
About healing a few. I mean, I think we've been giving the flirties tons of healing tools throughout this conversation, right? About how to trust themselves, build trust in their dating lives as well. Start to work through their trauma if they've experienced that, but certainly these experiences of hyperindependence and hypervigilance. So a few healing takeaways that the flirties they could try out that we haven't covered yet.
My tried and true is
Mhm.
breath work.
Yeah.
Something just as simple as some diaphragmic
Yeah, I think so.
belly
Mhm.
breathing.
Belly breathing.
Belly
Mhm.
breathing is such a good place to start, because
Yeah.
it's using your body to let your brain know that you're safe.
Mhm.
And that's from there healing can happen.
I love that as well.
The biggest leaps in healing that we can have, which is both, I think, scary for the flirties, but also maybe comforting.
Mhm.
Our biggest healing leaps are in connection.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be in romantic connection if you're not ready yet for romantic connection. I had texted Lindsay earlier in the year, you healed so much of my attachment shit.
Oh,
And so I think we a lot of times feel like a romantic relationship would like fill the hole inside of us or something, would
Yeah.
correct the trauma that we've experienced in our histories. But there are so many relationships available to us
yes.
where we can build in our healing. And so when you're experiencing relationships of any kind, even just a sweet, like you talk about with flirting, like
Yeah.
a sweet interaction out in the world,
Yeah.
pause with that relational experience, take it in, notice the sense of safety, notice what's happening in your body, what's alerting you to that being a safe
Absolutely.
interaction or connection, because it is not just romantic relationships that we can experience healing from. It's all of these relationships around us, big and small interactions, big and small people in our lives.
Ugh, absolutely. Breathing and flirting, two of my favorite things
Breathing and flirting.
in the entire world. And yeah, allow the flirt to be healing, right? It's like,
Yes.
it may be, if making connections is difficult for you, kind of a low stakes connection, so to speak. It's not really with romantic intent or someone that you're dating, but just allowing yourself to be seen, seeing that other person. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been on the register at Trader Joe's and, right, hopefully putting a smile on someone's face. And they're like, God, that's the first time I've smiled all day. Or that's the first time I've had a conversation with someone all day. Like, this is the first time I've been out of my house in days. Like, I think this is a really common experience, and connection is the antidote. It's the solution. Allow it to be a practice, play in the fantasy of it a little bit, and then just give it time. Like, I think about my yoga journey and teaching, and it's, I'll talk with students sometimes. They just feel like it's not working, or they're not getting the results they want. They get frustrated, they get down, maybe they stop coming to class for a little bit. That was me. It's just because you're not seeing the results you want to see, your expectations aren't being realized in real life, doesn't mean healing isn't happening, that your practices aren't working. Just keep doing it. You owe it to yourself. You do.
You do.
My goodness, Lindsay and Ilyse, thank you so much for being on Flirtations today. I want to send the Flirties your way, certainly to check out the podcast. Yeah, where can they find you and buy even the tender parts?
So you can find us at The Healing Journey, HILLING, on Instagram. Our podcast is coming soon, wherever you find your podcasts, probably in the same spot that you'll find Flirtations.
Yes.
And you can find me personally, Ilyse, at Moving Parts Psychotherapy on Instagram. My book, The Tender Parts, is available on Amazon and Audible. And Lindsay, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Austin Teen Therapy. And I've got some tips and insights about young people and caregivers that work with them. So you can find all that over there.
Fantastic. I'm going to have those links in the show notes below. Send the Flirties your way. Thank you both so much for coming on Flirtations today, sharing more about trauma, hyperindependence, hypervigilance, and helping me learn a lot as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Flirties, that's a wrap on this episode of Flirtations. Thank you so much to our guests, Lindsay and Ilyse, for being on the show today. I was so excited that we were able to connect and have them on Flirtations, and then I'm on their podcast, new podcast, The Healing Journey. You should definitely check that out. Just saying, I think it's one of the best interviews I've ever given. So yeah, I would love for you to check out that episode on their podcast. And I'm just really happy that we were able to record this episode for you. I think it was amazing. I learned so much, and I hope you got some healing from this conversation. Thank you so much for listening. To you, the Flirties, for tuning in, for streaming, wherever you may be in the world. Really appreciate you being here and having these conversations with me and with all the guests on Flirtations. Please rate, review, subscribe to the show if you haven't already. If you have, thank you so much. Now, if you would please share it with a friend, a family member, a coworker, someone you want to share some BFE, big flirt energy with, someone you even mildly like a little bit. And you want to share a podcast with them, why not let it be Flirtations? Okay, flirty. Signing off officially here at Flirt Headquarters. My name is Benjamin. I'm the flirt coach and gay Libra. Flirty. Happy flirting.